In fact, I think she called it a baby doll. It reminded me of maternity wear. I sent a small blessing to the clothing gods that design baby dolls for less cleavage. It was a stroke of genius, really. The jeans were more comfortable, but still ridiculously tight. Her reasoning behind her choice was functionality molded with style, or some stupid crap. I left my hair shiny and straight, too put off by the clothing to put any extra effort forward, and went to the kitchen to make us lunch. I had an Alice moment as I grew frustrated that I didn't know what kind of lunch to pack. I eventually decided on sandwiches. Just like with jeans, you can never go wrong with a sandwich. I packed it all in my old backpack after I was finished, adding some sodas and chips, and throwing it on my back excitedly. At noon I walked out to the gazebo, taking note of the clear sky and semi-warm temperature that made my thin, long sleeves bearable. Edward was waiting for me on the bench when I walked up, lounging back against the table, facing towards the houses. He stood up when he saw me approaching, still wearing his jacket for some reason, and looking gorgeous, as the sun made all his messy bronze hair sparkle a little. He smiled at me, holding his hand out for me to take. Without hesitation I slid my hand into his, and let him lead me to wherever he wanted. I was rather surprised when he led me down to the river silently. I walked beside him while grasping his hand, mildly curious, and taking some time to appreciate the river that I really hadn't spent much time enjoying. We walked along the rocky riverfront until we eventually came to a little wooden boat. When he stopped in front of it, I quirked an eyebrow at him. He smirked back at me.
"We'll need this to get where we're going,"
he explained rather cryptically. I rolled my eyes and let him help me into the little boat. He snickered at me as he got in behind me, seating himself on the opposite side facing me as I sat down unsteadily on the bench seat. And I laughed at him while I watched him paddle the boat down the river. It was calm, not rushing, or flowing downstream too heavily, so he didn't have much trouble. It was just a funny sight. He rolled his eyes at me and tried to look annoyed, but I could see his lips twitching into an almost smirk every time I would burst into another fit of laughter. His eyes looked even better in the sunlight, bright and clear, and not as red as they had been that morning. I just leaned back in the boat, slightly squishing my booksack in the process, as I watched him paddle in much amusement. The river really was nice, and I'd take the time to enjoy it as we floated southwards. The trees along the east side were rather thick, overflowing with green moss on their tree trunks as ferns peeked out from every crevice. Every now and then a strong breeze would blow by, making my hair wind and whip around my face as I gazed out at the woods, slapping it back in exasperation. The boat ride didn't last all that long, which slightly disappointed me. He helped me out of the boat, steadying me when I rocked a little, and lifted me onto the ground with ease. He took my hand again, leading me down the riverfront more as I pursed my lips in curiosity. Before I could get impatient and nosy, and just ask him where we were going, the trees beside the riverfront broke into a clear open space. Almost a meadow. Kind of like the one behind our yards, but with longer grass, and a few trees scattered around. I smiled, and entered the meadow beside him enthusiastically. It was so Edward. No frills or bullshit. Just simple grass and sun peeking through the canopies of the trees surrounding us, and as we sat down below one huge lone tree, in the middle of the meadow, that provided us shade, I decided it was one of the things I loved most about Edward. Simplicity. It always made me feel normal and comfortable. We ate lunch in the shade, finally able to just talk and laugh without having to hide how close we were, or worry about people gawking at us. He let me lean against his side with our backs to the tree trunk as we ate with our legs stretched out straight in front of us. He never took his jacket off, which I still thought was weird, because I felt perfectly comfortable with the temperature. "Do you come here often?" I asked curiously, gazing at the wide open space in wonder, as the sun-kissed blades of grass swayed in the breeze in the most serene fashion. He shrugged against me while he ate his sandwich.
"Jez and I used to hide out here to get fucked up when we were freshmen,"
he chewed in a no-nonsense voice. I wanted to roll my eyes at him because it seemed like he and Jazz used to do that kind of stuff a lot. Good thing Jasper had Alice to keep him in check now. I knew better than to think Edward would be inclined to suggest something so ridiculous. When we finished eating, he put his arm around my waist, letting me lean into him as he told me the frankly hilarious story of the flower shop. I curled my legs around me as I listened to the story in interest. His green eyes were filled with quiet mirth and amusement as he explained how serious Jasper was about the meanings of flowers, looking out towards the meadow with a smirk playing at his lips, and his messy bronze hair blowing against his forehead.
But it's a fact that they're an exceptionally beautiful flower.
He mocked in Jasper's slight southern drawl, snickering with a shake of the head at his choice of words. I laughed too, because it was almost like he was quoting Alice verbatim. And I knew he was because Esme got carnations, and Alice was annoyed to no end that everyone looked down on them so much. When my laughter got impossibly more out of control at the thought of her sitting Jasper down just to have a full-length conversation about something like flowers, Edward turned his face to mine with a smile. I attempted to stop my laughter long enough to hear the rest of the story. But when he began mocking Jasper for the
elegant and subtly majestic,
I doubled over laughing, holding my stomach. He really was quoting Alice verbatim. Edward laughed with me for a few moments, shaking his head in blatant disapproval of Jasper's choice of words. Because he attempted through our hearty chuckles.
Because here, dude, get these just wouldn't fucking suffice.
He rolled his eyes, leaning his head back against the trunk of the tree, and shaking it against it. When my laughter finally died down into the occasional breathless snicker, I leaned back into Edward's shoulder, relaxing, as the soft breeze billowed through the grass gently. Well, I thought they were lovely. I nodded decisively, and honestly, it was probably the most I had laughed since the Scooby-Doo pajamas. I let the amusement fill me with a euphoria that the whole event was bringing me spending time with my loving boyfriend just like any other normal girl. Then I realized that when I was with Edward alone, I really was a normal girl. It was only for him, but it was far more than I had ever expected. And I wanted to be a normal girl more for him than anyone else. We did that for a long while, just lounging and enjoying the silence as he fingered the ends of my hair falling just above my waist. I had leaned my head back and closed my eyes, smelling the grass and feeling the breeze coupled with Edward's electricity when I felt his fingers softly slide under my chin. I opened my eyes and let him turn my face to his. His green eyes were boring down into mine intensely, just staring at me for a long moment, while his fingers propped my chin up to meet his gaze. Suddenly, his eyes darted to my lips, and back to my eyes. I fought back a smile as I answered his silent request, and leaned up to put my lips on his. He slid his fingers from my chin to my cheek as he took my bottom lip in between his and sucked on it gently. I sighed as I worked on his top lip, bringing my hand around his neck to caress the soft hair at his nape. I impatiently pressed my lips against his firmer, darting my tongue out to lick his top lip and biting back a really embarrassing moan when he took it into his mouth. We slowly massaged each other's tongues as he held my waist firmer, and the hand on my cheek moved to the back of my head. We gradually pivoted towards each other as